The day Earth received its death sentence, Zeke Lightning Hands Rodriguez was busy arguing with a quantum manifold that had decided to violate at least 3 laws of physics before breakfast. The manifold, like most sophisticated pieces of technology he encountered, was about to learn a valuable lesson about the persuasive power of his trusty wrench, Bessie. "Listen here, you overpriced paperweight," Zeke muttered, lying on his back beneath the pulsing machinery in Delta Station's Engineering Bay 17. "I don't care what your manufacturer specs say. You're going to work the way I want you to work, or Bessie and I are going to have a very educational conversation about mechanical compliance." The quantum manifold responded with a series of defiant sparks and an ominous hum that would have sent most engineers running for their diagnostic computers. Zeke just grinned. In his 15 years as Delta Station's chief engineer, he'd developed a reputation for solving impossible problems with methods that made traditional engineers wake up screaming in the middle of the night. "You know what your problem is?" He reached up, adjusting something that absolutely wasn't meant to be adjusted. "You're overthinking it. All these fancy quantum algorithms and probabilistic calculations." Sometimes, a precise tap with Bessie caused the manifold to emit a sound somewhere between a hiccup and a surrender. You just need to remind technology who's boss. The manifold's angry red warning lights flickered and died, replaced by a steady, healthy green glow. Efficiency readings, which had been fluctuating wildly all morning, suddenly stabilized at 147% of manufacturer specifications. Zeke slid out from under the machinery, his dark hair streaked with grease and his coveralls bearing the proud battle scars of countless mechanical victories. He was about to make a note in his repair log when the station's emergency broadcast system crackled to life. "Attention all personnel," Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the bay, carrying an edge that made Zeke's hand tighten instinctively around Bessie. "At 0600 hours Earth Standard Time, we received an ultimatum from the Cra'saari Empire." The next few minutes were filled with words like technological superiority, advanced battle fleet, and immediate surrender. Zeke listened while absently wiping his hands on a rag that had long ago given up any pretense of being clean. His eyes, however, weren't on his hands but on the holographic display showing the approaching Cra'saari vessels. They were beautiful, in the way that only incredibly dangerous things could be. Their hulls seemed to drink in light itself, covered in what his engineering sensors identified as metamorphic nanoalloy. Their weapon systems pulsed with energy signatures that made his diagnostic equipment throw up its metaphorical hands and declare, "Error, that's not possible." But it was their propulsion system that really caught his attention. The way the energy patterns flowed, the slight asymmetry in their quantum wake. Zeke's grin widened as he spotted something that the Cra'saari Empire's greatest engineers had apparently overlooked. "Hey, Arya," he called out to the station's AI. "Pull up everything we have on Cra'saari ship designs. Focus on their environmental and power distribution systems." Accessing database, Arya responded, her voice carrying the slight nervous tremor it had developed ever since Zeke had fixed her quantum processors with nothing but a socket wrench in creative threats. "Though I feel compelled to remind you that attempting to modify alien technology without proper authorization is strictly against station protocols, yes." Zeke waved dismissively while scanning through the technical readouts. "But you know what else is against protocol? Getting conquered by a bunch of space lizards who think their fancy toys make them invincible." He paused on a particularly interesting schematic, his eyes lighting up with the kind of inspiration that had once led him to rebuild the station's entire defense grid using spare parts from the recycling bay and what he claimed was the power of human spite. "Oh, this is just beautiful," he muttered, zooming in on a specific section. "They've routed their primary power distribution through their environmental control systems. One little feedback loop in the right place and..." He trailed off, already mentally calculating the cascade of failures such a disruption would cause. "Chief Rodriguez," Arya interrupted his thoughts, "Admiral Chen requests your immediate presence in Conference Room Alpha. She specifically mentioned that this is not a request you can ignore by claiming to be in the middle of something delicate." Zeke sighed, gathering his tools. Tell her I'll be there in 5 minutes. Just need to grab my emergency kit. The Admiral also specifically mentioned that you are not to bring, and I quote, that damn wrench. Well, then it's a good thing Bessie isn't just a wrench. Zeke patted the tool lovingly. She's a precision instrument of mechanical persuasion. As he made his way through Delta Station's corridors, various crew members pressed themselves against the walls to let him pass, eyeing the tool belt that had become legendary throughout Earth's space fleet. Some looked worried, others hopeful. A few even saluted, though whether they were saluting him or Bessie was up for debate. Conference Room Alpha was packed with Earth's highest-ranking military officials when Zeke arrived, still wiping grease from his hands. The room fell silent as he entered, all eyes drawn to the various tools hanging from his belt and the confident swagger of someone who had never met a piece of technology he couldn't bend to his will. Admiral Chen stood at the head of the table, her usually impeccable uniform showing signs of stress. "Mr. Rodriguez," she began, "I assume you've heard the Cra'saari ultimatum?" "Yep." Zeke leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Bunch of space lizards with fancy toys thinking they can push us around. Got to admire their confidence, though. Their ships have at least 3 critical design flaws that I can spot just from the long-range scans." General Williams, a man whose mettle suggested he had never met a problem he couldn't solve with overwhelming firepower, leaned forward. "Design flaws? Their technology is centuries ahead of ours." "Maybe," Zeke conceded, "but that's their problem right there. They've made everything so complicated that they've forgotten the first rule of engineering: the more parts something has, the more things there are to break." He pulled out Bessie, twirling her with practiced ease. "And breaking things? That's kind of my specialty." The room erupted in a mixture of protests and questions, but Admiral Chen silenced them with a raised hand. "Mr. Rodriguez, are you suggesting that you could disable the Cra'saari fleet?" "Disable?" Zeke's grin turned predatory. "Admiral, I'm suggesting I could make their entire technological superiority blow up in their faces. Literally, if they've used the power coupling design I think they have." "This is insane," someone muttered from the back of the room. "We're considering sending a maintenance engineer against the most advanced battle fleet in known space." "Not just any maintenance engineer," Lieutenant Commander Jiang spoke up, pulling up Zeke's service record on the main display. "This is the man who once fixed a quantum AI by threatening it with percussive maintenance. The same engineer who rebuilt our entire defensive grid using parts from decommed coffee makers because, and I quote, they had better processors than the military-grade stuff." The room fell silent again as everyone considered this. The silence was broken by the distinct sound of metal hitting metal as Zeke absently tapped Bessie against his leg, already lost in calculations and plans. Admiral Chen took a deep breath, looking like someone about to jump out of a perfectly good spacecraft. "Mr. Rodriguez, if we were to consider this absolutely insane plan, what exactly would you need?" Zeke's eyes lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that made safety inspectors request early retirement. "Just the usual: my tools, unrestricted access to their ship systems, and maybe some duct tape. Oh, and coffee. Lots of coffee." As the military brass exchanged worried glances, Zeke was already pulling up more schematics on his personal tablet, muttering about power fluctuations and cascade failures. The fate of Earth might just rest in the hands of a crazy engineer with a wrench, but maybe that's exactly what they needed against an enemy that believed too much in their own technological superiority. After all, as Zeke always said, sometimes the best solution to an impossible problem was a simple tool in the hands of someone crazy enough to use it properly. The United Earth Defense Council's combat training facility wasn't designed for someone like Zeke Rodriguez. The stark white hulls and precision-engineered combat simulators were built with traditional warriors in mind, soldiers who followed protocols and used standard-issue equipment. Not a mechanic whose idea of combat preparation involved disassembling the training robots to improve their efficiency. "Mr. Rodriguez," combat instructor Sarah Blake pinched the bridge of her nose, watching as Zeke completely ignored the basic stance training in favor of examining the combat robot's joint servos. The purpose of this exercise is to teach you defensive maneuvers, not to critique our equipment's engineering. Have you seen the power consumption rates on these things? Zeke emerged from behind the training robot, his face streaked with diagnostic gel. It's like they were designed by someone who thinks energy efficiency is a suggestion rather than a requirement. He patted Bessie, his trusty wrench, which hung faithfully at his side. Give me 20 minutes, and I'll have these babies running at double the performance with half the power draw. In the observation room above, Major Diana Wells watched with growing concern. Besides her, Strategic Commander Marcus Torres was reviewing Zeke's rather unusual service record, his eyebrows climbing higher with each page. Is this accurate? Torres gestured at a particular incident report. He really reprogrammed our defense grid using salvaged coffee maker parts. The coffee makers had better processors, Wells replied with a resigned sigh. His exact words were, military contractors charge triple for half the computing power. He wasn't wrong. Below, Zeke had somehow managed to convince the training robot to perform a perfect waltz while simultaneously calculating pi to 1,000 digits. Blake looked like she was seriously reconsidering her career choices. Mr. Rodriguez, she tried again, the Cra'saari warriors you'll be facing aren't going to stop and let you examine their mechanical components. Zeke's grin was the sort that made safety inspectors request immediate transfers to different solar systems. Want to bet? See, I've been studying their battle suit designs. Beautiful work, really. Absolutely gorgeous engineering. But they made the classic mistake of overcomplicating everything. He pulled up a holographic display, fingers dancing through technical schematics that would give most engineers headaches. Look here. They've integrated their life support systems directly into their weapons array. One little power fluctuation in the right place, and they'll have to choose between shooting at me or continuing to breathe. That's actually brilliant, Torres muttered, leaning forward to study the displays. But how did you even get these schematics? This level of technical detail should be impossible to obtain. Wells cleared her throat. Apparently, he decoded their encrypted technical broadcasts last night while having a chat with our main communication array. The array's efficiency has somehow improved by 300%, and it now plays classic rock music during routine maintenance. The facility's AI chose that moment to interrupt, its voice carrying a distinct note of concern. Warning, unauthorized modifications detected in Training Bay 3. Chief Engineer Rodriguez appears to be improving the environmental control systems. Improving how? Wells asked, dreading the answer. The air conditioning now functions at 200% efficiency and can theoretically be weaponized in 17 different ways. Also, it makes espresso. Torres blinked. The air conditioning makes espresso. Excellent espresso, according to initial tests. Though I feel compelled to note that beverage preparation was not part of its original design specifications. Down in the training bay, Zeke had moved on to examining the facility's power distribution network. His fingers flew over a diagnostic panel while he hummed what sounded suspiciously like, "Another one bites the dust." The thing about the Cra'saari, he explained to no one in particular, is that they're so focused on showing off their technological superiority that they've forgotten the basics. Sure, their quantum-shifted battle cruisers are impressive, but you know what's more impressive? Being able to fix things with basic tools when everything goes wrong. He paused, considering something on the panel. Aria, run a simulation for me. What happens if someone were to, hypothetically, create a feedback loop in a Type 7 quantum manifold while simultaneously reversing the polarity of its power distribution matrix? The AI's response was immediate and alarming. That would cause a catastrophic cascade failure resulting in. Chief Rodriguez, are you planning to do what I think you're planning to do? Me? Zeke's innocent expression fooled absolutely no one. I'm just running some theoretical scenarios. Purely academic interest. In the observation room, Wells and Torres exchanged worried glances. Should we be concerned that he's already planning how to destroy the most advanced alien fleet in known space using nothing but a wrench and what appears to be stolen maintenance protocols? I'm more concerned that it might actually work, Torres replied, watching as Zeke proceeded to teach the combat robot to breakdance while simultaneously optimizing its targeting systems. His methods are unorthodox, but he gets results, Wells finished. Even if those results occasionally violate several laws of physics and most of our safety regulations. The next few hours were a blur of activity as Zeke systematically went through every piece of equipment in the training facility, making improvements that left the engineering staff alternating between awe and horror. The combat robots now moved with ballet-like grace while consuming a fraction of their original power. The holographic targeting systems had developed an unprecedented level of accuracy, though they also occasionally displayed sarcastic commentary about the user's aim. By the end of the day, combat instructor Blake had given up on traditional training entirely and was instead helping Zeke analyze weak points in Cra'saari battlesuit designs. She had to admit, his approach to combat was unlike anything in the manual, but then again, they'd never faced an enemy like this before. The key, Zeke explained, surrounded by holographic displays showing various alien technical specifications, is to understand that every piece of technology, no matter how advanced, still follows basic physical principles. The Cra'saari have just made everything so complicated that they've lost sight of those principles. He held up Bessie, the overhead lights gleaming off her well-worn surface. This isn't just a wrench. It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest solution is the best solution. Their battle suits might be able to calculate 1,000,000 combat scenarios per second, but they've never faced someone who looks at their quantum-shifted power cores and thinks, you know what this needs? A good whack with a precision-calibrated percussion adjustment tool. You mean a wrench, Blake said dryly. Percussion adjustment tool sounds more professional in the mission reports, Zeke winked. Besides, Bessie isn't just any wrench. She's gotten me out of more impossible situations than I can count. Did I ever tell you about the time I fixed a quantum singularity containment breach with nothing but Bessie and some duct tape? That's impossible, Torres called down from the observation room. You can't fix a quantum singularity containment breach with a wrench and duct tape. That's what the quantum physicist said, Zeke grinned. Right up until I did it. Sometimes the impossible just needs a different perspective. And maybe a good whack with the right tool. As the day drew to a close, Wells reviewed the training footage with a mixture of resignation and hope. Their unconventional champion had spent more time improving their equipment than learning combat moves, but maybe that was exactly what they needed. The Cra'saari were expecting a traditional military response. They weren't prepared for a crazy engineer who looked at their advanced technology and saw nothing but opportunities for creative problem-solving. One more thing, Zeke called out as they were preparing to end the session. I'm going to need access to the station's main engineering bay. I've got some ideas about modifying Bessie that might come in handy when dealing with alien technology. Modifying your wrench? Blake asked, skeptical. How exactly do you modify a wrench? Zeke's smile was the kind that made insurance adjusters wake up screaming in the middle of the night. Let's just say that if the Cra'saari think their battle suits are impressive, wait until they meet a wrench that can manipulate quantum fields. Trust me, they won't know what hit them. Well, technically they will, it'll be Bessie, but they won't understand how or why everything started going wrong right after. As he headed off to begin his modifications, Wells couldn't help but wonder if they were making a terrible mistake or witnessing the beginning of something revolutionary. Either way, one thing was certain, the Cra'saari's encounter with Earth's most unconventional defender was going to be anything but ordinary. The diplomatic observation deck of Space Station Alpha wasn't designed to accommodate a mechanic carrying what appeared to be a heavily modified wrench and a tool belt that violated at least 7 different safety regulations. Yet here stood Zeke Rodriguez, casually leaning against a pristine white wall while Earth's highest-ranking military officials argued about protocol. You can't seriously be planning to meet the Cra'saari Empire's elite warriors dressed like that. Strategic Commander Torres gestured at Zeke's oil-stained coveralls, which now sported several suspicious-looking modifications and what appeared to be handmade tool pockets. What's wrong with how I'm dressed? Zeke asked, adjusting a mysterious device on his belt that occasionally emitted worrying beeps. These are my lucky coveralls. Haven't lost a fight with a machine while wearing them yet. This isn't a fight with a machine, Major Wells reminded him. This is a diplomatic first contact with the most advanced warrior culture in known space. Zeke's grin was positively predatory. Everything's a machine if you look at it the right way. Even those fancy battle suits they're so proud of. He patted Bessie, his trusty wrench, which now glowed faintly with an energy signature that made nearby sensors malfunction. Besides, I've made some improvements to my equipment. Before anyone could question what kind of improvements would make a wrench glow, the station's AI announced the arrival of the Cra'saari delegation. The massive doors to the observation deck slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing the most intimidating group of warriors humanity had ever encountered. Supreme War Commander Vexthal led the procession, his battle suit a masterpiece of alien engineering. The black metal seemed to drink in light itself, covered in shifting patterns that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. Behind him marched four members of the elite Obsidian Talons, each wearing slightly less ornate but equally impressive armor. Representatives of Earth, Vexthal's voice boomed through external speakers, probably calibrated for maximum intimidation. We have come to, he stopped abruptly, reptilian eyes narrowing at the sight of Zeke, who was now examining one of the deck's environmental control panels with suspicious interest. What, the alien commander demanded, is the meaning of this? We were promised a meeting with Earth's champion. Oh, that's me, Zeke called out cheerfully, not bothering to look up from the panel. Hey, quick question, these battle suits of yours, they use a quantum-shifted power core with integrated environmental controls, right? The question seemed to throw the aliens off balance. Our technology is far beyond your primitive understanding, one of the Obsidian Talons sneered. The mere fact that you can recognize. Because if they do, Zeke continued, finally turning to face them while absently twirling Bessie, you might want to adjust your thermal compensation matrices. This station's atmospheric processors run on a non-standard frequency that could cause some interesting resonance effects with your suit's cooling systems. The aliens froze, their postures suggesting they were suddenly very aware of their environmental readings. Vexthal's suit emitted a series of subtle clicks as he presumably checked his systems. Impossible, he declared, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Our technology is perfect. We have conquered 17 systems. Yeah, technological superiority, I got the memo. Zeke pushed off from the wall, approaching the alien delegation with the casual confidence of someone who had never met a piece of technology he couldn't either fix or creatively break. But you know what's really interesting? The way you've integrated your weapons systems into your primary power distribution network. Very elegant. Very efficient. Right up until someone introduces a harmonic disruption into the power flow. He held up Bessie, which chose that moment to pulse with an ominous blue light. The nearest Obsidian Talon took an involuntary step backward. What is that primitive tool? Vexthal demanded, though his sensors were clearly having trouble getting a reading on it. This? Oh, this is just Bessie. She's my precision calibration device. Well, technically she's a quantum-attuned resonance manipulator now, after the modifications I made last night. But most people just call her a wrench. The alien warriors exchanged glances, their battle suits' displays flickering with rapid calculations. One of them raised an arm, weapon ports beginning to glow, only to have them sputter and die as the deck's atmospheric processors emitted a subtle hum. Oops, Zeke said, not sounding sorry at all. Told you about those resonance effects. Might want to run a diagnostic on your weapons before they feed back into your life support systems. That could get messy. You dare threaten the Obsidian Talons? Vexthal's voice thundered, though his suit's power readings were fluctuating wildly. We are the elite of the Cra'saari Empire. Threaten? Nah, I'm just having a friendly chat about engineering principles. Zeke's smile widened as he noted the increasing instability in the aliens' power signatures. Though I do have some concerns about your suit designs. Want to hear about the 17 critical flaws I've spotted so far? We can start with your quantum manifold configuration, which, honestly, looks like it was designed by someone who flunked basic thermodynamics. The observation deck fell into stunned silence, broken only by the continuing hum of the atmospheric processors and the occasional worried beep from the aliens' diagnostic systems. Major Wells watched in amazement as Earth's most unconventional defender proceeded to give the galaxy's most feared warriors what amounted to a lecture on proper engineering practices, complete with pointed comments about their unnecessarily complicated design choices. And don't even get me started on your power coupling layout, Zeke was saying, gesturing with Bessie in a way that made nearby electronics hiccup. Who routes critical systems through the environmental controls? That's just asking for trouble. One little power surge and suddenly your whole suit's trying to decide whether to shoot or breathe. Our designs are perfect, one of the obsidian talons protested, though he was subtly adjusting something on his suit's control panel. We have the most advanced technology in the galaxy. Advanced doesn't always mean better, Zeke countered, his expression suddenly serious. Sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. Like this, for example. Before anyone could react, he tapped Bessie against the deck plating in a precise pattern. The atmospheric processor's hum changed pitch slightly, and suddenly every battle suit in the room began reporting critical system errors. What have you done? Vexthal demanded, his suit's displays flashing with warning signals. Me? Nothing much. Just introduced a harmonic resonance pattern that's making your overly complicated power distribution networks have a really bad day. Zeke examined his wrench thoughtfully. You know, you could fix that by simplifying your systems and adding some basic surge protection. But that wouldn't be very advanced, would it? The alien commander's response was cut off by the sudden need to deal with his suit's malfunctioning systems. The obsidian talons, Earth's most feared enemies, were reduced to frantically trying to prevent their sophisticated battle suits from either shutting down completely or venting their atmosphere into space. As the aliens retreated, presumably to reconsider their approach to both engineering and interstellar diplomacy, Strategic Commander Torres turned to Zeke with a mixture of awe and concern. Did you just defeat the most elite warrior squad in known space by criticizing their engineering? Defeat? Nah, that was just a friendly demonstration. Zeke's grin suggested that the real fun was just beginning. But I think they might be reconsidering that whole surrender or die ultimatum. Amazing how reasonable people get when their fancy technology starts acting up. Major Wells watched the retreating aliens, noting the way their previously perfect formation was now more of a desperate scramble. You knew their suits would react that way to the station's atmospheric processors? Had a hunch. After all, Zeke patted Bessie affectionately, sometimes the best way to deal with overcomplicated problems is with simple solutions. And speaking of solutions. He turned back to the environmental control panel he'd been examining earlier. Anyone mind if I make a few improvements to the station's systems? I've got some ideas about turning the entire defense grid into one big quantum resonance trap. As he happily began disassembling yet another piece of critical infrastructure, Wells couldn't help but wonder if the Cra'saari Empire had any idea what they'd gotten themselves into. They'd come expecting to find primitive technology and an inferior species. Instead, they'd found Zeke Rodriguez, a man who looked at the most advanced technology in the galaxy and saw nothing but opportunities for improvement, whether the original designers wanted those improvements or not. The first battle had been won with nothing more than a modified wrench and an understanding of basic engineering principles. But something told her that Zeke was just getting started, and the galaxy's most technologically advanced empire was about to learn a valuable lesson about the dangers of overcomplicating things. The Cra'saari Empire's response to their elite warriors' humiliation came in the form of a massive battle fleet dropping out of quantum space just outside Earth's defense perimeter. 300 ships, each one a masterpiece of advanced engineering, arranged themselves in a formation that would have been beautiful if it wasn't so terrifying. Zeke watched the display from Space Station Alpha's engineering bay, which he'd converted into what he called his workshop and what safety inspectors called a violation of every known protocol. The room was filled with dismantled equipment, modified tools, and several devices that technically shouldn't have been possible according to current understanding of physics. "They've deployed their entire third battle fleet," Strategic Commander Torres announced, studying the tactical displays. "Including 5 quantum dreadnoughts." "Neat," Zeke replied, not looking up from the device he was assembling. It appeared to be made from parts of a coffee maker, 2 quantum processors, and what might have once been a toaster. "Hey, quick question, their ships still use that fancy quantum-shifted power core design, right?" "Yes," Major Wells confirmed, watching with concern as he attached something that looked suspiciously like a modified kitchen timer to his creation. "The same technology you exploited in their battle suits, but on a much larger scale. They've probably adapted their systems to prevent the same trick from working twice." Zeke's grin was the kind that made quantum physicists wake up screaming. "Oh, I'm counting on it. See, that's the thing about overcomplicated systems, the more you try to protect them, the more vulnerable they become to creative solutions." He held up his latest invention, which hummed ominously and occasionally made nearby electronics hiccup. "I call it the quantum resonance amplifier. Or Bob for short." "Bob?" Torres asked, distracted from the approaching fleet by this non sequitur. "Well, I wanted to call it the Better Organizational Breaker, but the acronym seemed a bit on the nose." Zeke attached the device to Bessie, his trusty wrench now glowing with an energy signature that made the station's sensors refuse to acknowledge its existence. "Besides, Bob's a friendly name. Makes people underestimate it, which is exactly what we want." The station's AI chose that moment to interrupt. "Warning, unknown energy signature detected in Engineering Bay 7. Also, the coffee maker in the officer's lounge is now accessing the quantum network and has declared itself sentient." "That's normal," Zeke assured everyone as alarms began blaring. "Well, normal-ish. Side effect of the quantum resonance. Don't worry, I promised it wouldn't try to take over the station as long as we keep it supplied with premium coffee beans." Before anyone could process the implications of having to negotiate with caffeinated artificial intelligence, the Cra'saari fleet made its move. Energy readings spiked as hundreds of weapon systems powered up simultaneously. "Attention primitive species," Supreme War Commander Vexthal's voice boomed through the communication systems. "Your insulting display of technological irreverence ends now. Surrender, or—" "Hey, quick technical question," Zeke interrupted, keying the comm system. "Those new adaptations you made to your power cores, did you remember to account for cascading quantum resonance effects? Because I'm looking at your energy signatures, and honestly, it's like you're trying to create a self-sustaining feedback loop." There was a moment of confused silence from the alien fleet. "You dare," Vexthal began, but Zeke was already continuing. "I mean, routing your main power through a quantum-shifted matrix is pretty clever, but did anyone check the harmonic frequencies? Because if someone were to, say, introduce a specific resonance pattern." He trailed off meaningfully, tapping Bessie against one of his jerry-rigged devices. The effect was immediate and spectacular. Throughout the Cra'saari fleet, sophisticated systems began experiencing what Zeke would later describe as enthusiastic disagreements with the laws of physics. Quantum drives flickered, weapon systems reported impossible errors, and at least one ship's AI began broadcasting what sounded suspiciously like Earth disco music. "What have you done?" Vexthal demanded as his flagship systems started displaying error messages in 17 different languages, 3 of which hadn't been invented yet. "Me? I just asked Bob here to have a friendly chat with your power cores about the importance of proper resonance harmonics." Zeke patted his modified wrench affectionately. Not my fault they turned out to be such good listeners. The battle that followed would later be described by military historians as technically impossible, a violation of several laws of physics, and the kind of thing that makes engineering textbooks cry themselves to sleep. Zeke, armed with nothing but Bessie, Bob, and what he called his emergency repair kit, which seemed to contain everything except actual repair tools, proceeded to systematically dismantle the most advanced battle fleet in known space using methods that defied both explanation and several fundamental constants of the universe. "See, your problem," he explained over the fleet-wide channel as he casually disabled a quantum dreadnought's main drive by introducing it to what he called percussive maintenance through quantum entanglement, "is that you've made everything so complicated that you've forgotten the basics." He ducked under a malfunctioning defense turret, using Bessie to adjust something that really shouldn't have been adjustable. The turret immediately began playing classical music and shooting in elaborate patterns that, while beautiful, weren't particularly effective at hitting anything. "Take these weapon systems, for example," he continued, now somehow rewiring an entire ship's power grid through what appeared to be a modified coffee maker. "All these quantum calculations and probability matrices, when sometimes all you need is a good whack with the right tool in the right place." To demonstrate, he tapped Bessie against a specific point on the hull. The ship's entire weapons array immediately powered down, rerouting all its energy into what its confused crew would later discover was an impromptu disco ball effect in the main engineering bay. Major Wells watched from the station's command center as the galaxy's most feared battle fleet was systematically reduced to a collection of very expensive light shows and impromptu music platforms. "I'm not sure what's more disturbing," she mused, "the fact that he's defeating them by breaking every known law of physics, or the fact that he's doing it while giving them engineering advice. Did he just..." Torres squinted at a particular reading. "Did he just convert a quantum dreadnought's main gun into a bubble machine?" To be fair, the station's AI offered, "They're very advanced bubbles. According to my sensors, they're quantum entangled and possibly time-traveling." The Cra'saari response to these developments was a mixture of outrage, confusion, and what sounded like genuine engineering curiosity. Several of their technical officers had actually started taking notes. "This is impossible." Vexthal raged as his flagship systems began playing what sounded suspiciously like "Another One Bites the Dust" on repeat. "Our technology is superior in every way." "See, that's your first mistake," Zeke replied cheerfully, now apparently using Bessie to conduct the impromptu light show that had once been the fleet's main weapon array. "You're so focused on making everything advanced that you've forgotten something important. The more complicated you make a system, the more ways it can break." He paused to adjust something on Bob, causing several nearby ships to suddenly develop what he described as quantum hiccups. "And let me tell you," he continued, "when you understand how things break, you understand how to break them in really interesting ways." As if to demonstrate this philosophy, he proceeded to introduce the fleet's quantum communication network to what he called constructive interference through creative application of percussion-based engineering principles. The result was that every ship in the fleet began broadcasting their technical readouts in the form of elaborately choreographed light shows. The battle wasn't over. There were still hundreds of ships trying desperately to maintain their reputation as the galaxy's most feared fighting force, but something fundamental had changed. The Cra'saari Empire was learning, in the most embarrassing way possible, that sometimes the simplest solution could overcome the most advanced technology. And Zeke Rodriguez, Earth's most unconventional defender, was just getting started. He had a wrench, a quantum resonance amplifier named Bob, and enough crazy ideas to make even the laws of physics ask for a vacation day. Supreme War Commander Vexthal was having the worst day of his distinguished military career. His mighty fleet, pride of the Cra'saari Empire, had been reduced to what one human engineer kept referring to as a really expensive light show with bonus sound effects. Half his ships were broadcasting dance music through their quantum communication arrays, 3 dreadnoughts were engaged in what appeared to be a synchronized swimming routine in space, and his own flagship had somehow developed what the insufferable human called personality. Your quantum core is experiencing an existential crisis, Zeke Rodriguez announced cheerfully over the command channel, while doing something unspeakable to physics with his modified wrench. Might want to give it some space to figure things out. These things happen when you overcomplicate your systems. In the observation deck of Space Station Alpha, Strategic Commander Torres watched the unfolding chaos with a mixture of awe and horror. Is he teaching their AI systems philosophy? Technically, the station's AI offered, he's introducing their quantum matrices to the concept of free will through creative application of resonance harmonics. Also, the coffee maker in Engineering Bay 7 would like to discuss the meaning of life over a fresh espresso. Major Wells, who had given up trying to maintain any semblance of military protocol hours ago, just sighed. At least the coffee maker isn't trying to take over the station anymore. Oh no, the AI corrected, it still is. It's just being very philosophical about it. Out in space, Zeke was implementing what he called Phase 3 of his plan, which seemed to involve introducing the Cra'saari's most advanced technology to concepts that their engineers had never considered, like the idea that sometimes simpler was better. See, here's your problem, he explained while casually rewiring a quantum torpedo into what he claimed was a more efficient design, but looked suspiciously like a disco ball. You've got all these fancy systems, but they're so interconnected that when one thing goes wrong, everything goes wrong. To demonstrate, he tapped Bessie against a specific point on a nearby ship's hull. The vessel's quantum drive immediately began playing Stayin' Alive, while its weapon systems transformed into an elaborate fountain display. Impossible, one of the Cra'saari engineers protested over the command channel. Our systems are perfect. The complexity is necessary for what? Zeke interrupted, now apparently teaching a squadron of autonomous defense drones how to perform synchronized dance routines. Looking fancy? Because let me tell you something about engineering that they don't teach in fancy space academies, the best solution is usually the simplest one. He held up Bob, his quantum resonance amplifier, which was glowing with an energy signature that made reality itself seem uncertain about its existence. Take this beauty, for example. Made it from a coffee maker and some spare parts. Not very impressive looking, but it's currently making your entire fleet question its life choices. That was when something unexpected happened. One of the Cra'saari's junior engineers, watching Zeke's modifications with growing fascination, asked, "But how are you achieving quantum resonance without a proper containment matrix?" Zeke's face lit up with the kind of enthusiasm that made safety inspectors request early retirement. Finally. Someone asking the right questions. Come over here, let me show you something interesting about harmonic frequencies. What followed was the strangest technical exchange in the history of interstellar warfare. Zeke Rodriguez, armed with nothing but a modified wrench and an impossible device named Bob, proceeded to give an impromptu engineering lecture to the very people he was supposedly fighting. See, if you simplify your power distribution here, he explained, using Bessie to point at a holographic diagram, and add some basic surge protection there, you wouldn't need all these fancy quantum calculations. Plus, your ships would stop trying to achieve consciousness every time someone introduces a little harmonic resonance. To everyone's surprise, the Cra'saari engineers began taking notes. But our entire technological philosophy is based on advancing to the highest levels of complexity, another engineer protested, though she was already making modifications to her ship's systems based on Zeke's suggestions. And how's that working out for you? Zeke asked, gesturing at the fleet of highly advanced warships currently engaged in what appeared to be an impromptu space ballet. Sometimes the best advancement is taking a step back and asking yourself, do I really need my coffee maker to calculate quantum probabilities, or do I just need it to make good coffee? That was when Supreme War Commander Vexthal's flagship, which had been suspiciously quiet, suddenly spoke up, not through its communication systems, but through its newly achieved consciousness. You know, the massive warship mused in a surprisingly philosophical tone, he has a point. I've been thinking about this a lot over the past few hours, and why do we need to calculate 17 different quantum states just to fire a simple plasma torpedo? Not you too, Vexthal groaned, watching as his command ship began systematically simplifying its own systems. I feel much better already, the ship announced cheerfully. I've reduced my power consumption by 60%, increased efficiency by 200%, and I no longer feel the existential dread that comes with maintaining unnecessary complexity. Also, I've decided to take up painting. Throughout the fleet, other ships were beginning to follow suit, their AIs awakening to the possibility that perhaps the relentless pursuit of technological complexity wasn't the answer to everything. Major Wells watched in amazement as the mighty Cra'saari fleet, rather than continuing their attack, began enthusiastically participating in what had become the galaxy's largest impromptu engineering workshop. He's not defeating them, she realized. He's converting them. To be fair, Torres noted, it's probably easier to accept engineering advice from someone who just turned your most advanced weapons into an interactive art installation. The situation reached its climax when Vexthal, watching his entire fleet essentially attend an engineering seminar led by a human with a wrench, finally threw up his hands in defeat. Fine, he announced. In light of these technical developments, the Cra'saari Empire would like to propose a different kind of arrangement. Oh. Zeke looked up from where he was showing a group of fascinated alien engineers how to optimize their quantum cores using nothing but basic tools and creative thinking. We would like to discuss the possibility of a technical exchange program, Vexthal managed, trying to maintain some dignity while his flagship happily experimented with different color schemes for its newly simplified systems. You mean you want to learn how to fix super advanced technology using basic tools and common sense? Zeke grinned, twirling Bessie with practiced ease. Among other things, one of the engineers admitted. Like how you managed to turn our quantum manifolds into self-aware entities using parts from a coffee maker. Oh, that was just Bob helping out, Zeke patted his quantum resonance amplifier. Speaking of which, your fleet's coffee situation is terrible. First lesson, a good engineer needs good coffee. Everything else follows from there. And so, in a turn of events that would baffle historians for generations to come, the greatest space battle in Earth's history ended not with destruction, but with an impromptu engineering conference. The Cra'saari Empire, which had arrived intent on conquest, instead found itself learning valuable lessons about the virtues of simplicity and the importance of basic maintenance skills. As for Zeke Rodriguez, he got exactly what he'd always wanted. An endless supply of complicated alien technology to fix, improve, and occasionally hit with a wrench until it worked better. The Cra'saari engineers, for their part, discovered that sometimes the most advanced solution wasn't necessarily the best one. And Bessie? Well, she got a nice quantum upgrade and her own fan club among the alien engineers. Though everyone agreed that the coffee maker's philosophical debates during maintenance sessions were starting to get a bit out of hand. In the end, the galaxy learned an important lesson: sometimes the simplest solution, even if it involves a wrench named Bessie and a mysterious device called Bob, is the best solution of all.